been waiting for them to come good, Brownie, but they just haven't. And I think there's a big issue at the Western Bulldogs. Now, I think it's bigger than what's happened at Port Adelaide and what's happened at Essendon. I reckon they're the story of the year. And let's take a look at what has gone down since the grand final. They conceded 93 points to lose the grand final by 74. We know that. Since then, they've been whinging about a team stealing a song that everyone sings. I couldn't believe what I was hearing throughout the pre-season and to start the year. We had Bevo lose the plot in round one, and I don't think he's handled himself exceptionally well this year. They're just not playing the way that we expect them to play. They've lost contested footy 5 out of their 6 games. In 4 out of the 6, they've scored under 75 points. And with the talent that they've got in their lineup, you wonder why this has happened, and they've won 2 of their 4. So yesterday, this was a real issue for them, how uncompetitive they were in the air. Adelaide took 26 intercept marks. Their average is 12. Their forwards refused to compete and bring that ball to the ground. It happened 26 times. Billy Frampton looked like, I don't know, like an absolute superstar yesterday. They made him look like that time and time again. Their connection from their midfield to their forwards, they could get nothing going. And it happened all game. And then, so Bryant's just not a good enough effort in the air. So I think we really need to start to drill down on what is going on at the Western Bulldogs. Why can't they score? Why do they refuse to win the contest? And why are their forwards refusing to compete in the air?
Okay, that's a big call to say that their slump is bigger than Port Adelaide and Essendon's.
Damo, they played off in a grand final, and from the halfway point of the grand final, what has gone on? They've beaten North Melbourne. You thought they were going to turn it around with a good win against Sydney. They've lost to a bottom 4 side. They've kicked 63 points or whatever it was yesterday. They can't score. And it's not a strong statement to see that their midfield aren't competing and their forwards, as we saw yesterday, aren't either.
A fairly frank assessment. Is there validity to it?
I think there is. I think that I was also one of those kind of talent that they'd turn things around after a soft kill against North Melbourne in a footy sense last week. But this is a game they should win. You look at Luke Beveridge. Their depth is a real issue. So if their midfield isn't dominating, what have they got? I think they've got Norton. They've got a poor defence. They've got Jamarra Ugle-Hagan just hasn't coming on like you'd hope for a #1 draft pick. They've got Darcy, who is another long-term proposition. Yep. So they've got Darcy and Ugle-Hagan, who you'd hope would be super players. We haven't seen Darcy yet, and he'll be a year or 2 away. But unfortunately, Ugle-Hagan just isn't quite.
I think you've got to give him time, Ugle-Hagan. I mean, he is a #1 draft pick, and big forwards, they don't develop at the rate of some other players or midfielders. Max King is a different example because he's burst onto the scene and he was ready-made to play AFL football. But if Alex Keith doesn't play, down back, they really struggle. Now,
everyone's got players out there, don't they?
They're on record as saying we're depth through the midfield. So maybe it is at the end of the year, that depth, they've got to offload one of the midfielders they don't really want to offload, and they need to get a centre-half back or a full-back, an aggressive type of player that most of the other better clubs have, because at the moment, if they don't defend in the middle of the ground, it opens up their back end too much.
It's not just Keith in the big man stakes that they're missing. Obviously, Josh Bruce, who went down late in the home and away season last year. You also got Tim English out for the game just gone and for a few more beyond it. Jason Johannesson's out, Lockie Hunter's out, Latham Vandermeer's out, Wallace was out. So there's reasons.
He doesn't play Wallace, though.
OK, we'll take Wallace out of the conversation there. But those other players do. They all played either ready for a grand final or in it. So Luke Beveridge is bemoaning the lack of options he's got at the moment.
We've got enough experience and playmakers in our midfield to create forward half opportunities. We haven't got a lot of players to call on at the moment. The next sort of tier are not quite ready. So we've got to continue to nurture and develop the boys who are in the side until we get 1 or 2 back who might be candidates to come into the team. And
now, come into the team, they play Essendon next week. I mean, that takes on blockbuster status for all the wrong reasons, doesn't it, that particular game?
Depending on what happens on tomorrow against Collingwood with the Bombers, and if you already got them in that conversation.
Well, I just thought at some point they're going to turn it around. They got Adelaide, and then they've got that game, 2 winnable ones, and all of a sudden you're back on track. But what stood out to me as I was watching, and granted it was on TV, they were outworked by a hungrier side. Adelaide were much tougher and hungrier than the Dogs, and that's not a talent thing. That's no one missing. That's a work rate.
But I don't think you can talk about the song as a reason, saying they've been whinging about a song that everyone.
I don't reckon they've handled themselves that well since.
It's hardly been a distraction, though, has it?
Well, there's been a bit of sooking going on.
They hung in there. They kicked a goal through Marcus Bontempelli with 7 seconds remaining. We go back to that point of the game to see what happened at the next centre clearance. You can see 7 seconds remaining on the clock, and it's a bounce, and under the rules, that's called back. What that meant, though, was that 2 seconds had come off the clock. It didn't affect the result of the game, but it's probably something the AFL, I think at some stage, will need to trim up and just tighten up on the protocols around the missing seconds in the game of footy. And again, just backing over, it didn't change the result, but you just wouldn't want that happening.
But it was raised, and it is raised. Say if it happens 4 times throughout a game, that's 8 seconds that's lost. So why can't we just... How big a thing is it just to say
I wouldn't be giving warnings on the 6-6 and 6 arrangements. I mean, we've had this in system now for a year and a half. It's a straight free kick. So that's the 6-6-6 arrangements. And with regards to the bounce, well, yeah, just reset it.
On the clock.
Just put it back there.
Yeah. Or clock just starts once the ruckman touches the ball.
Good call.
Not when he bounces.
Good call, Kano. Just on Tex Walker, he's made a massive difference to the Crows since he's come back in the side. We flagged how fit he'd been, Kane, through your intel with that, and he's just enormous. He kicked his 500th goal yesterday. He sealed the game with this, just the most beautiful and pure kick in the game currently, and he got his 500th goal, and only the 61st player in history to kick 500 goals.